Welcome to Cup of Joe with Joe tonight, folks. How is everyone doing? So we got a couple topics, and it was interesting. I actually had a great time today chatting with uh, God. I'm drawing a blank. Sorry about that, folks. But I had a great time earlier today chatting online with one of our earlier shows about a couple key topics. These topics included, of all things, the supply chain shortages, which we've talked about before, but I think we need to go into those a little bit more in depth. Uh, yes. We're going to talk about the primaries. Not just here in the state of Idaho, but the other three as well, because we had Kentucky, we had Pennsylvania, and there was a third state. I'm going to have to dig into it. But you know, primaries and what's going on with those. And something I did not know about this morning when I logged in on those, the idea that we are once again hearing congressional hearings on unexplained aerial phenomena. Yes. We're getting ready for a new big tech injection into the global economy. And in order to facilitate that, we are starting to talk about all of those new unidentified flying objects and what the aliens are going to give us, which really isn't true because the aliens know better than to give us any of their tech. This is just stuff that we've created on our own that government has kept suppressed until they're ready to be released. It's an interesting discussion. Watch me go down that rabbit hole a little bit later. And Amberly, thank you for joining us. Appreciate it. Okay, and as Dolores says, everybody get out and take a look. I'm going to go ahead and pop on some of the what we got here because I absolutely want to make sure that's not the one I want. Here we go. Kerberos News. Go to Kerberos News there, folks. Sign up, become part of the email, the messages that we continue to put out. Take a look at some of our other shows, some of which I participate in. Most of them all have good information. Yeah, and Dolores, thank you for putting it out for everybody out on Facebook. Yes. And Arif is back from Liberia. Thank you, by the way. We appreciate that international audience. Nice seeing you too, Kay. So let's go ahead and get into this first topic here where we're talking about, let's go ahead with the supply chain. Okay. Now, one of the things we had a good conversation earlier this morning about this was the idea that there are food banks, breast milk banks that exist in the United States. Now, breast milk does not, here in the United States, it is not a federally regulated product. This is human production. Women are donating to these breast banks. It's a mutual aid program. There's, like 6 or 7 of them, that have developed. Yes. Kerberos subscription links. All good. I'm going to go ahead and leave that up for a little bit here. But there are breast milk banks that exist all across the United States. These are mutual aid banks that have been sprung up largely to help women who can't breastfeed their own children. This is kind of a combination of wet nurse, frozen breast milk, other things that go on. And there's some interesting concepts behind a lot of this because many of these food banks have their own, or breast milk banks, yes, milk banks, have their own regulations, about what sort of testing they do on the breast milk that gets sent to them, how long it's stored, how long it's retained, who has access to it, who qualifies for it, as well as what the standards are. Because some of these are some pretty high end, like the mother pretty much has to sign a contract saying she will not do drugs. She will be vegan. She will not eat or participate in GMO food. So there's an awful lot of women who put themselves on a rather strict regimen in order to contribute milk to some of these banks so that special needs children, children with special dietary restrictions, children with allergies. It's sort of sucked to have a child who's got a peanut allergy go into anaphylactic shock because one of the donors wasn't paying attention to her diet. These are concerns. They're real concerns, and many of these milk banks are very meticulous about testing to make sure regarding allergens and who's allowed to participate, who becomes part of the process of this mutual aid system. Now, it's interesting. Okay. Okay. Jimmy Saves World made an interesting comment today while she was talking about this. Reason why is because she's looking at it and go, part of what we're going through right now with the formula shortage, it is a first world problem. Okay, this is a problem we experience here, and it's a particular interest to us here in America because of how dependent we've become on formula. Okay, so we're looking at a formula shortage. It affects us because of the way the situation has been created. Okay, we are looking at conditions. If we were to replicate the same level of shortage, this is interesting. My green screen's being a little bit weird on me. You know what? I'm going to let that digital slide just a little bit. So one of the things that we look at with regards to this is Yemen. Okay, Yemen, we have children who are starving right now, children that have food shortages, women who don't have enough clean water in order to hydrate enough to create breast milk to feed their starving infants, their starving children. So it's like we have an entire nation out there right now that we are participating in sanctions against, that we're participating in an effective genocide by supporting Saudi Arabia's war in Yemen, where we have children who don't have access to clean water, don't have access to milk. The mothers who would be producing milk for these children aren't able to produce because they are undernourished. So when we look at that, we start, okay, well, breast milk and formula shortages in Yemen. World Health Organization is trying to get stuff in there. Ukraine is another one. It's another big one. An awful lot of people were looking, well, there's shortages in the Ukraine, so they were buying up, formula to gift to the Ukraine, sticking them on boats and shipping them over. And formulas end up in an awful lot of aid packages here in the United States. Now, and I agree with you, they don't need our breast milk. They need an end of hostilities. Okay, they need an end of hostility. But their current shortages are related to our support of hostilities. In much the same way that our support of hostilities continues to affect Ukraine. And this is another interesting thing. New development. The bacteria that was associated with the deaths that were linked to the shutdown of the Abbott facility couldn't actually be found in the Abbott facility. Okay, FDA has continued to delay actions. And this is one of those things where here we are in a situation where, okay, we want to blame it on the free market, or we want to blame it on socialism. We want to blame it on the FDA. Okay, now the thing is we have 6 factories here in the United States. 6 formula factories. The biggest one happens to be the Abbott manufacturing plant. Now, the Abbott manufacturing plant produces the most. Reason why is because in 1989 or sometime back then, the government went to a single contract option. Okay. When you apply for WIC for women, infants, and children, when you go in and apply for WIC, the only specialized formulas that you can purchase are the ones that are created through the Abbott plant. Nearly 2/3 of WIC purchased formula went through the Abbott plant. That is why we are looking at a shortage right now. A lot of women who use WIC to make sure that their child has formula can't buy it because the only brand they're allowed to purchase using the WIC program is made in the plant that was shut down. Take a few moments to wrap your head around that. Because literally the only formula that impoverished women in the United States was allowed to purchase is made in a plant that's been shut down for 4 months now. Okay. Target and restricted subsidies are the least efficient and effective subsidies. Okay. Economics. Here we were. We created a subsidized supply with an effective monopoly, and then we tanked it. We tanked it for 4 months. The women who needed formula the most weren't able to buy it because the WIC wasn't approved for the available options that were still on the shelves after the supply from Abbott dried up. Okay. You cannot blame that on the free markets because the free market isn't what caused the problem. You can't blame it on socialism because if you'd done a distributed social list, where there were more than 6, where there was more than 1 that everyone was allowed to purchase from, if there had been a local, decentralized, they would have been allowed to purchase off the economy using the same program. No, this is straight up cronyism. This is profit control. This is everything that we have warned about and attempted to discourage ever since Reaganomics became the standard here in the United States. Okay. We need more formula plants. We need smaller plants. We need localized manufacture, localized distribution. We need to get those plants closer to home. Some of the other things that we're looking at. Now, here in the state of Idaho, fairly recently actually, we ran into a scenario. Now, this was Baby Cyrus. And it made big news here. Reason why is because Ammon Bundy and his crew actually got out and, yes, for those of you who are aware of Ammon Bundy, okay, Ammon Bundy got out and actually created a scene outside of St. Luke's pediatric facility because Baby Cyrus had been medically kidnapped by our local authority, by the hospital. They went through court. They got Baby Cyrus brought back into the hospital for a wellness check and investigation. Now, the thing is baby Cyrus suffers from failure to thrive. One of the reasons for this is because baby Cyrus is largely allergic to just about everything, including mother's milk, or, well, his mother's milk, provided she can actually provide. Now, they were looking at other ways of trying to make sure that baby Cyrus was getting enough nutrition in because of his allergies. Goat's milk didn't work. Regular milk didn't work. A lot of the brands of formula didn't work because of his allergies. He wasn't able to retain the nutrition. Special needs child. Went in, doctors weren't able to resolve the issue, even after they had a court injunction to bring the child back in. Okay. This continues to be a problem. It's a problem for a lot of young couples, a lot of young couples with children with special needs who, for some reason, whatever reason, the best medical professional advice, the best systems, out there, their child just isn't able to take care of the issues. It isn't able to retain the nutrition. And this goes back to the issues of what Jimmy was talking about. This is a first world problem. In any other nation in the world, well, second, third, not in a Western nation, not in European Union, not here in the US, but in any other nation of the world, where we did not have the medical advances necessary or even the family support necessary to support a baby, a child like baby Cyrus, that child would die. Done. Wouldn't survive, would fade away. One day the child would be buried. No questions asked. Not here in the United States. And so again, first world problems. This goes back to issues like in Yemen. We have the ability to do the right thing by as many children who are born as possible. Yet we still find ourselves falling short because of not socialism, not free market capitalism, but because of institutionally created bottlenecks created by the United States government and federal regulations. We can do better, people. We can do better. Our breast milk banks, they are making things happen. They are not federally regulated. They are guaranteeing the safety of their products. We have models of free market that work. We have models of free market that are successful. Just need to get there, folks. Just need to get there. Okay, now let's talk about the primaries. Cawthorn, I believe he's out of Pennsylvania. He got booted. His competition managed to kick him to the curb, so Cawthorn's on his way out after making his big scene about cocaine-fueled orgies at the GOP events in Washington, D.C. Come on, man. Right? You bring it up. We're bad at social programs because first our leaders have to figure out how to profit off of them. That is a continuous problem with regards to social programs in the United States. None of them are instituted until after somebody has figured out how to conduct the graft, the money laundering, so that they get their cut off of the social program. Much like what's going on with 40 billion that's being sent on its way over to the Ukraine right now. It's being held up because somebody doesn't know how to launder their share of it yet. Okay, that's not fair. Rand Paul's the one who's actually stuck it. I'm not sure how involved he is in that. There are others who have been benefiting for a very long time, from aid, from social programs. And you don't get rich off of a congressional salary. You get rich because you know things that you learn and control in Congress. Mike, you killed my train of thought here. Cawthorn. Okay. Cocaine fueled orgies. He got into Congress on the family values. This was an individual who, handicapped, Republican, family values. The thing that got him busted out was photos developed of him at a drag event where Cawthorn was dressed in women's lingerie in an awkward situation. Okay, Cawthorn, nobody cares. Nobody, just don't be a hypocrite about it, okay? You know, if you go to cocaine fueled orgies before you go to Congress, then after you get to Congress, you complain about the coke fueled orgies because of your family values, it's not going to go over very well. I'm just saying, you know, Jimmy brought up a great point in the discussion earlier today is, you know, this is the internet generation. Because of the way we share information, because of the way we share photos, our ability to create photos in a heartbeat, in an instant, and be able to transmit it to the rest of the world. Chances are you got compromised photos of you in compromised positions somewhere just waiting to surface. Coke fuel. Right? Yeah. So here he got himself stuck in a situation. You know, you don't go in claiming to be part of family values as a redeemed degenerate. That an awful lot of people looking at you going, yeah, dude, I knew you 5 years ago. You're not fooling anybody. How many remember the character Tom in The Great Gatsby? You know, who the guy was. He was cheating on his wife with his mistress, and he was complaining about the irredeemable degeneracy of the new generation and the speakeasies and jazz. Right? More orgies for everyone. More orgy. Okay, now that's not actually a good thing because no, we you can't. The Reddit detectives, boom. You know, you say something, do something. It takes all of 30 minutes before a rebuttal to what you said is out there for everybody to know. You know, the entirety of your FetLife profile is boom, they're on Reddit or 4chan, depending on, you know, the classification. I'm shocked the gambling is going on here. Yeah, no, nobody's shocked. We all know it's gambling. We've created an addiction to gambling. Thank you, New York Stock Exchange and the Chicago Commodity Exchange. You know, the U.S. banking industry has created an industry of gambling with the American economy, gambling on the American economy with the American economy. You know, 90-day planning cycle. Can we hit the targets in 90 days? Can we hit it by, you know, the next quarter report? Yeah, it continues to be a problem. So Cawthorn's out. Just don't. Now, one of the other things, he was Pennsylvania. The other thing in Pennsylvania, I believe Dr. Oz is the leading candidate. Yeah, I got friends who are glad the pre-2000 tail hooks never made it onto cell phones. Yeah. Um, Dr. Oz is leading candidate. Now, he's an interesting one because he's one that actually got the Trump bump. Okay, he got a Trump bump for his position. Trump came on and said, you know what? I support Dr. Oz. This is interesting because there's certain things that Dr. Oz supports, which normally you wouldn't expect to see in a GOP candidate. And like one of those is the red flag laws. Dr. Oz supports red flag laws. Of course, so does Dan Crenshaw, who's from Texas. And of course, Trump, while he was president, he supported the red flag laws as well. The ability, let's take the guns and worry about due process later. Sorry, folks, that's a violation of the Fourth and Fifth Amendment, I believe. Due process, come on. You got to have a reason, you got to have a warrant. Preferably not a no-knock raid in order to secure somebody's guns. Yeah. Yeah. So Dr. Oz may be one of those Trump bumps that secured a position. Now, here in the state of Idaho, there's some interesting things about the way things went here in the state of Idaho. We had nearly 1,200. Now I realize that's not an awful lot, but we had 1,200 third-party voters show up at the polls to cast a vote to determine which gubernatorial candidate was going to go to November. Okay, you think about that. One of which was, we had 500 constitutional parties who showed up and voted because there was constitutional party primary. Dr. Ryan Cole, who's made himself famous here in the state of Idaho for medical freedom because he believed in the ivermectin solution. He was one of those who came out against the lockdowns. He made himself pretty much nationally famous, going against Fauci on the issues of COVID-19. And he didn't get in time to actually register to have his name on the ballot. He was a write-in. Despite that, he still came pretty close. He was less than, I think, 15 points from Davison. I think it's Gilroy Davison. She's the one who is actually the constitutional candidate moving forward. Another 700 showed up in order to vote for the Libertarian nominee. Paul Sands, if you're out there listening, Paul Sand is going to be the Idaho's Libertarian nominee for governor. Now, the big story actually happens to come out of what happened with regards to the executive, the statewide assignments, as the duopoly collapses under its own panic throes. Okay, and there are an awful lot of people in blue states right now that are saying the Democrats have shot themselves in the foot, which they have. Okay. They've had 50 years to accomplish something like the codification of Roe versus Wade so that reproductive rights were secured. They could have done it under Obama. They didn't. Now we have the Alito court, right? And Paul. Now we have the Alito court that has basically thrown out the ability of federal legislation to effectively create reproductive rights nationally. Reproductive rights now have to go through the process of being created in each of the states until you have enough states that you can take it back up to the federal level, claiming that reproductive rights are the rights of any American citizen. Alito's got some interesting theories. That's going to be our next big topic. What rights are actually protected? But we'll get to that in a moment. State of Idaho. The GOP extremist wing. The individuals who got the Trump bump here in the state of Idaho because of their commitment to, I don't even know what Trump's requirement as far as commitment to was. Yeah, federal laws and SCOTUS rulings, convenience for coward politicians who lack the courage of conviction. And that was one of the things with Roe versus Wade. Roe versus Wade accomplished something that an awful lot of politicians wanted to see happen, but it didn't actually give the rights that needed to be achieved in order to move forward. That's going to be one of those things that's interesting as we move forward and we try and fix that with local state legislation and possibly a review of trying to get the Equal Rights Amendment validated and verified. It's one of those things that should have been done. But for some reason, 3/4 of the states never got around to ratifying the Equal Rights Amendment. So the protection of the Constitution regarding reproductive rights and bodily autonomy were never extended to the full citizenship of the United States. Men, women, LGBTQ, because we never got around to the ratification of the ERA, those protections do not exist. And according to Alito, those protections can now be suspended by a state because they don't exist. Women's right to self-ownership, because it did not exist at the time of the writing of the Constitution. An individual a state can suspend those rights. Yes, a state can suspend the respect for women's rights on a state-by-state basis now. And because women's rights didn't exist when the Constitution was written, the Constitution does not grant federal authority to protect a woman's rights. Welcome to the Alito Court. Welcome to originalism. Welcome to the idea that Loving versus Virginia can be overturned. Yeah. We got some big issues out there, folks. It's going to be interesting seeing this court with this nation, especially as we look at what's going on politically with the Republican Party, with the Democrat Party, and looking at significant dissatisfaction with both of them. Blue states are looking at their Democratic leadership and going, you had the opportunity, why didn't you? Red states are looking at their leadership and going, wait, what? You want to do what? No, these were our established rights. What are you doing trying to take them away? So SCOTUS, let me bring up scare tactic. Oh, it scared some people. It scared a lot of people. Problem is I don't think the leadership in either party expected Alito's leak to come at the time it did, because it has affected primaries across the United States. It will continue to affect primaries. It will affect the general. You are looking at third parties stepping up and becoming relevant at this particular time, Reason why is because the Democrats never fixed the problem, and the Republicans have decided to exploit the problem and create a situation in the Supreme Court. People who have become accustomed to rights that are associated with Roe versus Wade, Casey Planned Parenthood, Griswold versus Connecticut, Loving versus Virginia. People who have become accustomed to those rights, realizing that their rights are now threatened because of an originalist Supreme Court who's going back and undoing decades of case law and case precedents, are looking at the two major parties with significant dissatisfaction in what happened. Here in the state of Idaho, that extreme right who is ready to take advantage of the overturning of Roe versus Wade, Janice McGeehan, before the leak was even confirmed, was going, let's call an emergency session of our state legislature to make our trigger law effective immediately upon publishing of the opinion. Remove all exceptions, including medical need of the mother. Remove rape, remove incest from our trigger law. As a result, we had nearly 20,000 individuals decide that they were going to move over to the Republican Party. They were going to vote in the Republican primary, specifically to make sure that the person who just called for the most extreme anti-abortion law in the United States to become even more extreme was not going to make it to the gubernatorial race in November. 20,000. The right overplayed their hand. And as we see more and more of this develop with primaries down the road, it's going to be interesting to see how many of them double down on the idea of making abortion even more illegal now that they've been given the permission to from the Supreme Court of the United States, versus those candidates who realize it, maybe people aren't ready to give up those rights just yet. And they'll start trying to walk it back, especially after watching what happened to Janice McGeehan here in the state of Idaho. Mike, it's telling that our political class don't want to codify your human rights. Demonstrated during COVID that they don't actually respect your autonomy or your individual humanity. This is true. A manufactured medical emergency that turned out to be significantly less dangerous than had been applied was used to suspend your rights, was used to suspend your right to work, your right to earn money, your right to travel, your right to assemble in church or in political events. All of your rights were suspended over an emergency. Okay, now I'm not going to discount the loss of life. Although, let's be honest, in an awful lot of those places where the loss of life was significant, like New York, New Jersey, in places where governors told caregivers to put highly contagious, highly dangerous, diseased individuals in assisted care housing with individuals who were immunocompromised. Yeah, I'm going to call that euthanasia right there, folks. I'm going to call that euthanasia and eugenics. And why those governors are not in prison right now for it is beyond me. They put people with COVID in housing with people who were immunodeficient and somehow thought that was a good idea and that people weren't going to die from it. That deliberately inflated numbers. That caused deaths that made this disease look significantly worse than it was. Caused people to die who didn't need to die. Okay. Right, Brandy. Yeah, we're actually at that point because this court does not support, in its originalism, it does not support the people of America. Okay, this is not a court that is interested in ethics. This is not a court that is interested in morality. The court of Judge Alito is a legalist court. It is an originalist court. It does not care about justice. It does not care about morality. It does not care about ethics. It cares about the law. And as we all know, you cannot use the law as a measure of what is just or what is ethical or what is moral. Slavery was legal. The Holocaust was legal. What Judge Alito promotes is what is legal. Not just, not moral, not ethical. This is an extremely dangerous Supreme Court. If the other two branches of the United States government do not develop an ethical or moral backbone while these justices continue to sit the seats. And this is true. The only enforcement mechanism of the SCOTUS is our willingness to obey it. Okay? The rulings of the SCOTUS don't mean anything. It's up to whether or not we obey the laws that are created by our legislatures and whether or not we continue to support them. This comes back to the issue of consent of the governed. Welcome to the original documents of the founding of our nation, the consent of the governed. Right to life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. Whatever they did to the Constitution of the United States following Thomas Jefferson's writing of the Declaration of Independence, yeah. Now it goes back to the issue of consent of the governed. Simply choose the laws and say, you know what, we're done with that one. We're reaching that point. We are reaching critical mass where people are looking at the situation and saying, you know, I cannot survive as long as that law is in place. My right to life, my right to liberty, my right to happiness is denied as long as that law exists, and I will break the law in order to ensure the security of life for me and mine. Randy, we're down to it, man. We're down to it. Third party and independence. We're there. You can't rely on the protection of a system that can be flipped every 4 years. Don't ask the government to solve. You got to find the solution in your community. You got to be able to resolve it in your community. Localize, decentralize, distributed architectures, mutually supporting architectures. We're back to that. Localize your supply chain. Distributed architecture. Be able to make sure that you have more than one source in case your one source goes down. Welcome to Abbott. Do you have 3 or 4 solid sources for the formula that your mothers are going to need in order to feed their children? I know you're being sarcastic there, James. I really do. And admittedly, I'm having a hard time keeping a straight face. And Kay, we're there. Industry. government, stronger together. Those were the foundations of Mussolini's corporatism, the foundation of FDR's corporatism. Government, industry, stronger together. Welcome to the exploitation of the labor class in order to make sure that the industry leaders continue to receive their just rewards for allowing us to work. Attorneys that even if Congress codified it, the Supreme Court would overturn it, and this is true. Unless you go in and you actually create a constitutional amendment. That's where we're at. Before this originalist court will go in and sustain the rights of women, the rights of the citizens of the United States, regardless of sex, creed, race, heritage, ethnicity, religion. We need to rewrite the amendment. We need to make that happen. James, yep, they were. Jury nullification. Shut it down in the courts. Plan it, yeah, absolutely. We're working on that. And qualified immunity continues to be a problem. As long as the cops continue to enjoy qualified immunity, they will continue to enforce the unethical, immoral, and unconstitutional legislation that our politicians continue to create. And branding, mutual aid. If you're able to reach out to other communities, distributed architectures, the mutual aid system. You may not be able to create it yourself, but there's another community nearby. And it's not the only community. Oh yeah, FDR. If they were time travelers, yes, they did. Because essentially they used an awful lot of the same tactics and techniques in order to create and build the industries. Government sanctions, government protectionism. We continue to see that all the time. And Brandy, right? FDR was not a friend of minority communities in the United States. Okay, despite Eleanor Roosevelt's extreme work on the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, FDR did not create policies that benefited minorities in the United States. He put Japanese Americans in work camps. He continued to support Jim Crow laws in the South and several other communities. Qualified immunity, civil asset, no-knock warrants, FISA courts, gone. We need to make those go away because those are all violations of human rights. Those are all violations of the rights of the citizen that were guaranteed protection under the Bill of Rights. God, I hope Eleanor gave him a lot of crap over it. He definitely deserved it. So one of the other things, as long as we're talking about the issue of protectionism and the idea of industry and government stronger together, this goes back to where we were talking about the idea of alien technology. Whether it's alien or not doesn't really matter because that's going to be the way we create the plausible deniability for the copyright piracy is going to allow government and specific industries that are friends of the government to take control of the introduction of this new technology into the American space. It denies actual human ownership of this disruptive technology that they're trying to figure out how to profit off of as they introduce it, as we change concepts of physics, how we fly, how we travel. The idea of being able to put people on the moon, the idea of being able to put people on Mars in a timely, efficient manner. You know, we have the ability. There are people who have created copyrights, you know, the patents of the technology that's capable of putting us there. These are things that we need to be cognizant of moving forward as they introduce these brand new alien technologies, industry technologies, these things that Tesla and SpaceX have been developing, that our Air Force pilots, our Navy pilots are seeing out operational and functional. Somebody created these, and right now we're in the process of a situation where we're making sure that the people who invented, the people who created, the people like Tesla who created will never be able to benefit from their inventions, from their creations, because friends in high places have guaranteed that certain individuals will be the ones to profit off of these discoveries, off of this disruptive technology that's being introduced. Welcome to the new UFO talks. Pay attention to what's going on. And Mike, right, absolutely. I really do hope it's alien, because if it's alien, the aliens are going to own us on it. The lizard people theory. Right? Your migraines, yeah. Stress. We got an awful lot of changes going on. We are, for lack of a better term, we are living in interesting times, folks. That we are. Okay. I got to roll off. I got other things I need to do. Pay attention to what's going on in your community. Start developing those networks. Start developing those community associations and those mutual aid programs. Be able to look out for each other. Okay? Family, friends, community. As long as you got those three things, you can make anything happen, people. I love you. Take care of each other. Give me a moment here. Yes.